It's not going there. Thank you very much, Mr. Miguel. In your capacity as Master of Ceremonies here this morning, and of course recognizing you in your capacity as Deputy Director of the Office of Law Enforcement Policy, OLEP, recognizing as well Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Madam Nataki Atiba Dilchan, Madam Gail Charles, Director of the OLEP, other professionals, other staff of the OLEP who received from your leader worthy and due compliments and congratulations in her short remarks to us, officials of the Ministry of National Security, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I was listening to some commentary this morning about elements of the World Cup, and I heard a commentator asking whether this man called Mbappe or Mbappe just fell from the sky, implying, of course, that what we saw yesterday and in the last few weeks, I take it, didn't happen by chance. It happened as a result of his own and his country's and his team's development and nurturing him. So we saw the tip of the iceberg yesterday, the 1/3 above the water, but there was a 2/3 below the water, unseen from the public perhaps for many years, and Mbappe came to our faces and consciousness perhaps for all time. Similarly, a lot of people in this country do not know very much about the Office of Law Enforcement Policy. This is an agency established by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and its mandate, as Madam Charles indicated a while ago, is to contemplate, to think, to conjure, to assess, to project into the future, and constantly reshape the policy positions around law enforcement, sharing that with the government, it now being used as a guide by the government, not operating blindly or by VAPs, but on the basis of research, analysis, contemplation of new developments, and projections into the future. That is in essence what OLEP is all about. And I'm happy as Minister of National Security to indicate that from the time I took this desk, I have been working very closely with the Office of Law Enforcement Policy, and I'm quite satisfied and happy that it is executing its mandate. It is in this regard and against this backdrop that I had asked OLEP to consider matters relating policy issues around the issuance of firearm users licenses, the firearm users license regime in Trinidad and Tobago, which, as you know, is administered by an Act of Parliament, initially Act 44 of 1970, now the Firearms Act Chapter 1601. And while we had that law, there was never any written policy. And lawyers and constitutionalists will understand that on the basis of our law, our jurisprudence, our constitution even, your policy has to be consistent with the law. If it is not, then the policy is called into question by the courts, independent arbitrator as that is. So we never had a written policy. But when I came to this ministry, there developed in the society a lot of noise, discomfort, public outcry, complaints to me as minister, all kinds of things around the grant of firearm users licenses and variations. And we saw phenomenal increases in the numbers that were given in a very short space of time. And as a result of that, it occurred to me and the government, of course, that we needed to have a look at this, because it appeared to be inconsistent with the well-established restrictive policy that Trinidad and Tobago pursued, notwithstanding that it was not in writing since 1970 when the law was born, and before that in an independent Trinidad and Tobago, and before that in a colonial Trinidad and Tobago. I had the opportunity to visit the firearm license regime office in the UK recently. And I was amazed to take account of the fact that that 60 million population of Brits, they had only issued 1.5 licenses, 1.5 million licenses in a 60 million population. And when they issue a license there, it is not for handgun. Handguns are out of the question, not on the agenda at all. It is shotguns. It has to, in their regulations, in their policy, to be of a certain muzzle length. And the butt, in other words, you can't hide that under your coat, is a gun for farming, to kill pests, for hunters, for people who are involved in shooting. Very, very, very restrictive. But this country pushed the button of what I consider to be mayhem. Every Tom, Dick, Harry and his little brother, some people under the age that the law stipulates, and all manners of things happened. And the public quite properly raised concerns, did not escape yours truly as minister and the government, and we called on OLEP to structure a policy, and OLEP did just that. Presented it to me. But by which time, they operating as efficiently as they do, by which time another investigation into the firearms regime was taking place, and it eventually issued its findings. And it issued recommendations, and quite properly and sensibly, I thought that it should be returned to the OLEP, the policy that is, so that OLEP could now take into account the latest recommendations and developments, and that is precisely what I did. And that work was done, and it is now represented for my consideration and my onward transmission to the cabinet for its consideration. And if the cabinet of the country accepts it, or any amended version of it, because it is a draft policy, when the cabinet accepts it, it becomes the policy position, and Trinidad and Tobago, particularly those who administer the Firearms Act, Chapter 1601, will be, must be guided by it. This policy touches all kinds of things about the way we dispose of ammunition, ranges, how they are granted. It is a very, very thorough arrangement, making recommendations, no doubt, for legislative change, changes in other policy positions, and that sort of thing. So I would like to take this opportunity in that regard to thank OLEP for its work. I hear a lot of ill-informed, uninformed, ignorant commentary about things national security in Trinidad and Tobago. And because of the dignity of my office, because of my own personal dignity, because of my good sense of what is required of me as a minister, I very often, for the most part, bite my tongue. I say nothing. I listen to the empty ignorance sometimes, and take it as par for the course. I want to say to you this morning, I estimate that about 85% of what we do in national security cannot be discussed in the public. Cannot be. And therefore, don't misunderstand silence for lack of care, lack of concern. It's far from that. It is simply a respect for what we do and the way in which it ought to be done, and the very essence, the very nature of things national security. 85% of it is to be unspoken. But there's a 15% or so that can be shared, including the developments this morning. So we are sharing with you, the national community, that intellect, consideration, contemplation, plenty work on the part of the young people, the professionals in OLEP, led by Mr. Miguel and of course Madam Charles. As you would have heard from her, going to those who practice this, meaning those who, including the commissioner who issues licenses, his staff in the firearm users licensing registry of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Defense Force, the customs, wherever they went, they did the ground and got the facts to inform this document that will guide Trinidad and Tobago into the future. In respect of border security, I have said many times that the highest priority for the Ministry of National Security is our border security. Because we are a twin island state, republic, with many access points that are not formal ports of entry, and they are used illegally by those who want to come here or deposit guns, ammunition, human persons in the context of human trafficking with us. On our east coast, on our north coast, on our south coast, all over they come. And we are very close to the South American mainland, as you know. And we are affected by that. They use underwater sea craft to bring things up on beaches, well known for many years now, and many other very ingenious ways of getting filth, the tools for mayhem, drugs, to poison our young people, to stupefy our young women if they go to a little lime, somebody pops something in the drink, to bring women, young women from Venezuela and other parts in the context of human trafficking and make them modern-day slaves. Guns, ammunition, and from information coming constantly from the police, we have, in fact, from OLEP and the police and other arms of law enforcement, thousands and thousands of illegal guns of all descriptions, including the heavy prevalence of assault weapons discharging 5.56, which is what soldiers use in the battlefield, and 7.62 ammunition, which has since been outlawed by many civilized countries, civil societies around the world, because those are very devastating rounds of ammunition that do dangerous things. In some cases now, it is confined only for military use, and in some cases it has been outlawed even for use by military in the context of human concerns, human rights. So our borders are very porous, very threatened, and therefore we understand that hard as the police might work to mop up and to clear up drugs and illegal guns from on the turf in Trinidad and Tobago, unlike what another politician thought, that the fight is on the land, and no, the fight is at the sea alone. No, we have to fight all over. It's an ongoing issue. And therefore, with the importance of border security in mind, and the futility of taking guns out of the hands of criminals, and just more coming all the time, and that recycling, revolving door, so to speak, we focus on our border security. And it is in this context that I again asked OLEP to look at it, because the way we are structured now, we have a number of agencies who have some impact with, articulate with our border concerns. We have also discovered, and you would have heard it many times, that our legal ports of entry is a primary place for the importation of all of these illegal items. And it is in this regard that I have said publicly, it may have escaped you many times, that one of the major afflictions and problems we face in this country is the business of corruption and complicity, especially on the part of state officials who are sworn and paid by you as taxpayers to protect us. In many cases, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, all over the globe, state actors get involved in criminality for their own benefit, exposing all of us in the ways that we are familiar with, very sadly. So our legal ports of entry has also come sharply into focus, and it is in this regard that the OLEP reached out to Australia, an island continent having similar challenges as us, to interface with Australia, to interface with the United States, to interface with Jamaica and the rest of the region, CARICOM, and to see what they are doing. To see how, for example, in the United States, they have merged a number of agencies into what is now called their Homeland Security concept, an interagency platform. We do have an interagency platform here too, by which we work informally. And it is all of this and the best way forward, based on the most up-to-date best practices that would have been garnered or gleaned by OLEP from around the region and the world, that will be a part of the document for my consideration, for onward transmission to the Cabinet for its consideration, and if found sufficiently compelling, would be approved and become the policy to guide the future of our border security arrangements, given its significance to the government and its top significance to the Ministry of National Security. We are deeply concerned, and I heard the police saying over the weekend, I think it was, how concerned we are for the state of crime, murders, raping, home invasions in Trinidad and Tobago. Deeply concerned. And our job is to do something about it. And we, I give you the assurance, will do all that we can. But just as the criminals and the international criminal fraternity think and plan and manipulate societies using whatever resources, and we complicit human beings, including state officials, to facilitate their plans, we too have to sit and think and plan. And the two documents today are the products of that thinking, application of intellect, an application of analysis of best practices across the place, and to see what can be recommended, what can be done in Trinidad and Tobago to assist in this onslaught at the hands of criminals. So this morning, well, I would have heard about it from the police commissioner, but I heard on the news this morning, we lost 4 or 5 lives over the last few days, 2 days or so in Trinidad and Tobago. Very, 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 very painful. I understand in Tobago, some elderly gentleman lost his life because a domestic situation with a 41-year-old son who decided to resolve this conflict by pushing this old man over some little precipice or cliff or down some stairs or something like that. And the poor old man died at hospital. Domestic. When the criminals fight over drugs or turf or their human victims, While they carry on their fight, we as a society feel the effects of it. It generates fear. Some time ago on Picton Street in Newtown area, gangs at war, over 64 rounds of ammunition from an assault weapon was discovered by the police to have been used in that bloody murder. I think it was a Saturday. That traumatized the whole neighborhood, traumatized people, everybody living in fear. But we can't stop. We have to fight with the law and the Constitution, the Law Enforcement Policy Office, all of the police at our disposal, all of the Defense Force, the Fire Service, the Customs, the Immigration, every single resource, our vehicles, whatever we have to continue this fight. And we give this country the assurance we will continue this fight. While I listened to that news item this morning, right behind it, news in Canada, I saw, and I would have told you, this country, within the last year, the Canadian government, led by Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister, announced publicly to Canada and to the whole wide world that they had banned the importation of handguns into Canada because Canada is experiencing the same kind of mayhem that we are experiencing. And that was followed up a few months ago. The Prime Minister again announcing not only have we banned the importation, we have now banned the sale of handguns in Canada. Because these things are causing mayhem in our ordinarily peaceful society in the hands of misguided criminals. That was on the news this morning. 5 people were killed in a single incident in Canada yesterday. Notwithstanding that they banned the importation, notwithstanding that they banned the sale of handguns. They are in the society, they're coming in, they have weak borders too. Very regularly we hear of mayhem in the United States, 14 people killed in an incident, 21 people killed in an incident. What is happening in Trinidad and Tobago is not unique. Some people will try to pretend or try to create the impression it's only happening in Trinidad and Tobago. What a fool. This is an international challenge. All over the Caribbean, little quiet St. Vincent, beautiful, from which the name Hinds came. I heard the Prime Minister within the last 6 weeks crying out to St. Vincent, more murders than they ever saw before. Barbados, up to when I last checked, 60-something murders, little peaceful Barbados. With a very tiny population, they are having no end of trouble. Well, Jamaica too. There was some Jamaica too. Going into Christmas, states of emergencies. Now they declared one or want to declare one in the parish of Mandeville. In 8 of their parishes, states of emergency. I heard the Prime Minister this morning. It's a problem. And we have it in Trinidad too. And those of us who are sworn and paid as minister, as officials in national security, commissioner, police, and the rest, we have a job to do and we're going to do it. We've said many times we need your help, Trinidad and Tobago. Because we can't be everywhere. We can't see everything. We can't know what is happening in the next living room, like the situation in Tobago, or in the next bedroom. But there are signs and there are symptoms. And all we ask you, including what the police asked on the weekend, I heard the police commissioner calling on you, women of Trinidad and Tobago, recognizing your innate and God-given power that you use in dealing with our children as mothers, as teachers, as aunts, as guardians. You women have real power because you are the one who brought us all up. nurture us. They say if you educate a man, you educate an individual. When you educate a woman, you educate this society, because really it's the women who convey today's culture into the next generation and the next. Women, very powerful, and I appreciated what the commissioner said. And in that context, she called on the women as an army to deal with our children, socialize them well, teach them well, nurture them, discipline them well, so that they will grow up to be more law-abiding, socialized, civilized human persons, less likely to wreak havoc upon us when they get access to this thing called a gun. A good call. And I heard the police as well, as I will now join, calling on the national community to see the police service, to see the Ministry of National Security as the tip of the spear. We are the ones in the front. I said the other day, you know, it would be nice. I don't crave it, because I am too experienced and I understand this thing too well. I understand that the strength has to come from within, and from my God, from whence my help cometh. But it would be nice if I ever felt that I had the full weight of the society behind me, leading national security, leading all the organizations of national security in our collective fight as a nation, because after all, it's you who elected me. It's you who pay me. You are the boss. It would be nice if I felt I had all of your support in Trinidad and Tobago in the fight against criminals, criminality. It would be nice. And therefore we ask you to join with us, to support us. On the other hand, I said to the Parliament some time ago, I came into this business understanding that 70% of this society does not support this effort or want to see us succeed. How did I arrive at 70%, Mr. Superville? Because we are so... I heard the Jamaican Prime Minister this morning, because there's opposition politics in Jamaica too, and they need support in the Parliament, I understand it, to carry on these state of emergencies in the fight against crime. And recently the opposition signaled that it wanted to withdraw its support for that, and so they're doing the business. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have a lot of that. Instead of a united fight, very often we have some division, even at the level of the Parliament. Even at the level of the Parliament. So, I say 50% want to fight, rather than join in the fight. And then the other 20%, I would say, are those who are likely to commit crime and involved in it and antisocial behavior and so on. I put 50 and 20 together and I say 70, because lawbreakers and criminals don't want national security to succeed. But it would really be nice if we had full support. But even so, we understand the turf, we understand what is required, and fight we will. So I would like to conclude by thanking OLEP for the application of its intellect in accordance with its mandate and its analysis and its work in putting together these documents. I will study them. I wouldn't simply read them. I would study them. I would have my own thoughts based on my own understanding of things. I transmit it to the cabinet for its consideration on behalf of all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, OLEP. Thank you for your work. You are true to your mandate. And may we continue together in this fight, dealing with this problem of burgeoning crime and our response as a state to it in Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you.